Hello, friends. Hope you all are doing well. I'm outside of my home right now, so if you hear cars passing, bear with me. I was not able to get outside in nature today. Bummer. I really love getting outside. You are similar to the universal space that is all around us. Let's use a metaphor of sorts, an example, to point out our infinite being compared to something else that is infinite. Our being is infinite, vast, boundless. It is not limited to anything, any object, any location at all. What else can we find that is similar to that? Let's take your house, for example. Wherever you live, it doesn't matter. I want you to notice everything within what you call your kitchen. It's very typical to say, this is my kitchen. But if we take a look, what do we find within our so-called kitchen? We find objects. We find walls. But do you want to know what we also find that actually makes up our so-called kitchen? We find a universal space. You can't see it, but it is the space that makes up your kitchen. The space in which the walls are in and the objects of the kitchen. And it may seem that space is confined to the walls. That is a very conventional way of thinking and very surface level way of thinking. Low vibration level way of thinking. Let's take a look at our being. Our being is very similar. What do we find within the simple awareness that is always present, just like the simple space that is always present but overlooked? We find objects, emotion, sensation, perceiving. Just as in the kitchen, you'll find a microwave, a stove, a sink, a chair, tables. Relate that similar to the emotions, to thoughts, objects. And wait, we find a body, we find form within awareness. Relate that to the walls that we find within the space. Do you see how everything is relating here or being used to represent one another? It's not going to be perfect, but try to stick with me. Now, if we look at the space that we call our kitchen, if we actually look at it, look at the space in which we call our kitchen, we will see that the reality is an experience that space inside the kitchen is not limited to the kitchen. That space is not limited to the objects. The space is what allows the kitchen and the wall. The space is what allows the so-called kitchen to exist. It is what allows the objects to be there to be believed a kitchen. It is what allows the walls to be there to be believed a confined room known as a kitchen. Well, let's look at our awareness. How normal is it in today's culture, and always, is it to believe that what we are is limited to something similar to walls, a body? What we are is limited to something similar to the objects in the kitchen, the emotions, the thoughts, the stories, the sensations. But if we return and look at our space, if we return and look at our awareness that is just like the universal space, without that awareness, without that space that we are, would the objects, the thoughts, sensations, or the body even exist? Sit with that for a moment. Would the kitchen exist without the allowed universal space? Now, if we remove the walls of the kitchen and we remove every single object within the kitchen, what are we left with? We are left with universal space with no boundaries, no borders. Matter of fact, the kitchen is universal space with no boundary or borders. It is just assumed that because we see walls and objects, that space, well, first of all, the space is rarely ever noticed. It's a kitchen to most anybody. But that space, even with the walls and objects there, is infinite and boundless and has no borders as well. That space continues through all walls, all objects, all experience. But it is assumed to be confined to that so-called room. Just like we are assumed at our nature, what our nature is, to be confined to the body and the emotions and the sensations and the thoughts that appear. Do you notice what I'm saying here? I love talking this out loud on these videos, guys, because it really resonates with me and always brings me back. Because sometimes in this game that we play, it is very, very easy to fall back into conventional thinking sometimes, if you allow it. So I love sharing these messages with you guys. So it's just similar. If we remove believing that we are the body, if we remove believing we are the objects of sensation, thought, and emotions, you will see that our being is boundless, infinite, and has no borders. Our being is shared with everyone and everything. Without our being, without the knowing awareness that we are, this so-called human life would not even be able to be known. That's why we are everything. We are everything. Everything is us. No, not the body. No, the awareness that we are. Just like the space of the kitchen, our awareness is unable to be located. You will never find it in a certain direction. You will never find it in a certain location. You'll never be able to give it a color, a taste, a name, a gender, a shape. No. But it's not a magical thing that I'm talking about. This isn't magic or a religion, you can say without a shadow of a doubt, without the awareness that has been present for your whole life, you would absolutely not be able to know any of this beautiful creation, God's creation. You are God's presence. We are God's presence. It's clear. If we're speaking about the space of the kitchen, think of how vast that is, how boundless that is. What can you say about your being? Your being is the source of life. Your being is infinite, boundless. And your being is overlooked often, and sometimes always. It's a sad state of affairs. Just wanted to share that message with you guys. Relate it to something we all know of, a kitchen. But we're looking deeper. We're looking at that space within the kitchen. Look at that awareness. The space is actually not within the kitchen. Forgive me for saying that. And the awareness is not actually within the body. That is one thing that you have to notice as well. Take care, guys.